At this point, Greg Sankey is playing both sides of the coin, and I think that only means bad things for Iowa State. So we're talking about it today on Locked On Cyclones.
You are Locked On Cyclones, your daily podcast on the Iowa State Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Shout out to you for being here every single day and making this your first watch or listen of the day. I appreciate it more than you know. Whether you're watching on YouTube or listening on your favorite podcasting platform, be sure to hit subscribe so we can prove once and for all that it is, in fact, a Cyclone state. Today, we're going to be talking some more college football playoff. I know, but this is an interesting quote, and Greg Sankey just keeps delivering. So we got to keep talking about it. Don't worry, we'll be focusing on the Cyclones. And then we're going to talk about, in the second segment, what could it look like if we go to this Power 2 kind of conference model. We talked about it a little bit yesterday, but could Iowa State survive? We'll talk about that in the second segment. And then finally, we're going to round things out with sticking in the football theme. Iowa State, what do they need to do to get to the next level? Obviously, made the Big 12 championship last year, but didn't quite get it done. What needs to happen this year and moving forward? We'll break that down in the third segment. Before we get that far, though, today's episode, is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. All right. Greg Sankey is, I think he's now like resident co-host of this Locked On Cyclones. This guy just keeps saying things, so I have to keep talking about him. This is per Ross Dellinger, as it usually is. Ross is one of the best out in the game. He said, on the Dan Patrick Show, SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey re-emphasized his longtime personal opinion on a playoff format, a bracket of the top 12-plus ranked teams with no automatic qualifiers. He said, quote, I'd give no allocation, AQs. When we get into rooms, we make political compromises, end of quote. Ross continued on by saying Sankey again suggested that the CFP selection criteria needs to change to incentivize the scheduling of highly competitive non-conference games. Asked directly about universal scheduling, Sankey said he'd, quote, that's a weird type of situation there. Quote, happy for a coordinated conversation about trying to get scheduling right. Quote. So, this right here is definitely not what I thought Greg Sankey would say, based on what we've talked about up until this point, like the push for the 4-4-2-2-1 model. Like, let's get it's just really crunching as many SEC teams as we can into this playoff. This is like the exact opposite of that. And I don't really know what the angle is here. When all these comments are made or whenever a story is released, information is quote unquote leaked, there's always an angle. There's always a reason. I don't know what the angle is here. I really don't know. Is this a babyface move? I'm not quite sure. I completely understand what the play is here. Nonetheless, I wanted to look at it from Iowa State's perspective. There is the conversation of the no automatic qualifiers. That's a portion of this. There is a conversation of, kind of the scheduling as a whole. That's a part of it. And then really the college football committee is kind of the other portion of this. Greg Sankey also, it's not in this tweet, but mentioned like the committee kind of needs to be re-looked at. I don't think he's necessarily that far off, but let's go one piece at a time here. First one being just the top 12 ranked teams with no automatic qualifiers. I don't think that helps Iowa State. I don't. I don't think that Iowa State, though I do think Iowa State is going to get there. I don't think Iowa State at this point in time is at that point where they're going to get the respect they deserve. If Iowa State goes undefeated this year and just clobbers every opponent, I mean, we're talking 60-point wins, week in, week out. Rocco Beck, 480 yards, 6 touchdowns, no interceptions, perfect QBR. Carson Hansen has 1,300 yards on the season. Just an absolute dominant performance. How high would you realistically say that the committee would rank Iowa State? How far into banana land would we have to go for Iowa State to be ranked number one? I feel like it'd have to be pretty far. Like what I just said might not be enough, because there's always going to be the conversation of, well, it's the Big 12, or, well, this team, they did lose in week 1, but like they have been really dominating since. I I don't know how far out of reality, even beyond the realms of like what can happen in a football game, we have to go to where we're realistically able to say, I think that Iowa State team would be ranked number 1. Now, obviously, you don't have to be ranked number 1 to make it into this playoff model, this top 12. But what I'm saying is, if it's that hard to get to 1, how hard is it to get to 10? Because it's not like, some teams are just given a little bit more leeway. They just are. Just okay. Well, you're probably not 1. Yeah, you're probably not ranked number 1, but we can throw you in at 4 or 5 or whatever. Yeah, you'll make the playoff. Once you're in the game, all the records are 0-0. Once you're in the dance, you just got to find a partner, learn to tango. You know what I mean? That's all it is. Once you're in, you're in. For Iowa State, a team like Iowa State, I think a lot of Big 12 teams probably would feel the same way. The committee just doesn't look the same way at Big 12 teams in general, let alone at Iowa State, who just doesn't have the history. I mean, first double-digit win season last year, all time. We still have not accomplished 10 wins in a season. Yeah, 11, but not directly right on the nose 10. So I don't think that bodes well for Iowa State, just because it would be so hard for them to get in. And we'll talk about this kind of in the final segment today. But like a conference championship, you bring that home and you're in. Like, I love that. I do. It completely eliminates the idea of this committee having the power of, well, Iowa State, yeah, they won every game. They won every game by 20. But against, let's throw in, this is not meant to be at any one team, but against UCF, they scored 20 points in the last 5 minutes. So that was a really close game. So for that reason, I don't think that they're quite better than Georgia and Ole Miss. Let's throw in there. Maybe we could throw in Clemson. Obviously, Ohio State's going to be in there. So it pushes them down just because of that. Let's put them at 8. I don't like that there's this subjectivity to it. Or even, if it were to push them out of the top 12, where maybe they're a 1 or a 2 loss, but they're kind of ugly losses, but a lot of dominant wins, up and down. Where do you rank that? What happens when there's an automatic bid for a conference champion? I don't think it's perfect, but I think it has its upsides. I think that 12, just purely wide open ranked, probably plays a little bit out of Iowa State's favor, though it's not like I say all this and it's like it's not the end of the world. Like, Iowa State still could play really well, make the top 12. I mean, it's not like it's never happened, right? Iowa State has been ranked in the top 12 before, just need to finish the season that way. As far as all these other comments, it's kind of wild to hear him say that he's making these compromises with the college football playoff committee. The scheduling conversation of a coordinated deal could be kind of nice, just from a football perspective. I don't know how that would tie in across conferences. I would love to see more on that, but I think a lot of people would be happy with a concept where we can just look at all the games and it makes sense. And I don't know if we'll ever get there, but I wonder if that's maybe a step in the right direction. And then as far as the committee goes, I don't know what to do with that. I don't have a right answer for you. It's just it feels not right, that we might have to completely switch up the system. So if you agree that we kind of need to just completely scrap the system and change it, let me know what you would do down in the comments below. Or if you're listening on podcast, at Nick_Marv is my Twitter. I want to hear all these theories so I can start throwing these out to other people. And I'll come up with some over the course of the week here. We can get into that as we get to the dog days of the summer. But yeah, I don't know if I have a fix for you right off the top of my head. I do think, though, that the 12 team just ranked probably not the best for Iowa State. And if the SEC and the Big Ten were to split off, what does that mean then? Where does that leave Iowa State? We'll talk about that coming up right after this. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live. With player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. You know, Locked On Cyclones is watching the Indiana Pacers very closely, and Tyrese Halliburton, I am certainly tracking that man. And how could you not be excited about $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet hits? It's 40x. It's pretty good if you ask me. And if you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, let's break down if there's a world where Iowa State is no longer in the Big 12. First off, do I want to be there? Oh, I love the Big 12. I do. You're here with Locked On Cyclones, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I'm Nick Marvitz, and I love the Big 12. And I'm not ashamed to say it. I'm not afraid to say it. Um, I don't think Iowa State will suffer if the Big 12 kind of disintegrates. I think Iowa State will be fine. I want to get that out of the way. Now, why are we even talking about this? Well, there's a lot of contention, of course, around the college football playoff, really college football as a whole, honestly, really college athletics as a whole. If you want to zoom way out, go super macro here, we definitely can do that, and you'll be able to feel it. You can cut the tension with a knife. Everybody's got the right idea. Nobody knows what anyone else is doing. They all think it's the worst play ever. We got to find a compromise somewhere. And I don't know what it's going to look like. I don't. There are certainly a lot of options out there. And as far as the college football playoff goes, there's multiple different formats. The 4-4-2-2-1 approach, where there's 4 automatic qualifiers for the Big Ten, the SEC, 2 for the ACC and the Big 12, 1 for a non-Power 4 conference. Then there's the 5+11, 1 automatic qualifier from each conference, and then 1 automatic qualifier from the non-Power 4, and then 11 at-large bids. And the reason I'm recapping all of that really quickly is because that ties into the amount of conference games that the SEC could play. They would move to a 9-game conference schedule, or at least the higher-ups think that they would, if they were guaranteed multiple spots into the college football playoff. Obviously, that ties into the play-in games that we've talked about that I think would be pretty sweet, but SEC coaches aren't a huge fan of. There's all of this kind of back and forth and who's and what's and trying to find a good middle ground. And in that, I think that there was something that kind of flew by the wayside, at least as far as my timeline went. I didn't see a whole lot of conversation about it, where Greg Sankey was like, if it came down to it, like, could the SEC leave, the SEC and the Big Ten leave the NCAA, basically leave the Power 4. I don't have the quote up in front of me, but I know he alluded to it. And I also know that in that same vein, during those SEC media days, I believe it was right in that 3-day period, he had mentioned, like, I don't have the power to do that. So I don't think that this is coming down the pipe right away. It's not something I'm super concerned about at this moment, but I do think it's something that it's not impossible, right? It's something that could happen, where the Big Ten and the SEC are the ones that have the decision-making power to modify the college football playoff, to basically modify whatever they want from the sounds of it. And they were like, you know what? If we're kind of running this show and they're kind of crimping our style, why don't we just go somewhere else and do it ourselves? We talked about the quote, I believe it was yesterday, where there was an SEC, kind of upper level guy who was like, I think we can all agree that would be the national champion, right? Whoever won the tournament between the SEC and the Big Ten. I don't think that that's true, but there is kind of an idea out there where this is a world we could live in. So all of that as a preface to where now let's jump into a hypothetical where the Big Ten and the SEC are kind of leaving the Big 12 and the ACC behind, and now it's fend for yourself. Now it's really, we got to figure this out. I don't think Iowa State is in the worst shape. Obviously, football trending up, I think. Great things on the horizon. I am excited to see what this year brings. I think we really seriously could be looking at back-to-back double-digit wins season, excuse me. Not double win, no win. It's like that came out of my mouth weird. No, not double win, double-digit win. 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, however many wins it takes. I think they could do it. Shoot, maybe they get 20 wins. That'd be pretty crazy. I do think the football it's a great buy low situation, right? I think there's a lot of potential there. You've got the super strong in-state rivalry with Iowa that could play a role. You've also got all of the amenities that Iowa State has with like Town, things of that nature. Ames, one of the greatest cities on the entire planet, and I can very confidently say that. I really truly believe that. Unbelievable city or town or whatever you want to call it. I don't care. It doesn't really bother me. It's one of the best in the books. And then, yes, there is the conversation of the finances, but I believe if Iowa State were able to work their way into one of these two power conferences, I think they'd be just fine. I wouldn't be too worried about it. And if you want to play that game, which I don't like saying this, but let's just hypothetically go here. Every conference kind of needs a guy at the bottom. It wouldn't be Iowa State. Of course it wouldn't, but maybe there would be one down here. I mean, look at the SEC. Are you telling me like Vanderbilt, other than for baseball? I mean, I'm not trying to pick on anybody here, but like Mississippi State every now and then maybe find their way down. It's not the Big 12 where it's kind of up and down every year for the whole league. It does feel like other conferences have guys more towards the top, more towards the bottom. I'm not saying Iowa State would be that team. I think they'd be probably at the top. I think they're better than Alabama. They're better than Georgia. Clip it. I don't care. I actually believe that in a culture standpoint, that's definitely true. Maybe they wouldn't win every football game. Okay, you're probably right. But let's get off of football because I think that's a buy low. That's a great opportunity. I think that there's a lot of potential there, but I don't think that that's where Iowa State can hang their hat. And we've talked about this. Iowa State probably a basketball school. I think Iowa State is, in the basketball sense, secure. I think Iowa State presents one of the best basketball programs in the country and one of the best basketball venues in the country. Hilton Magic is legit. Hilton Magic is the real deal. You bring Hilton Magic to the Big Ten, you bring Hilton Magic to the SEC, instant asset gained for that conference. And I'm not doing this like getting this out early. Like, oh, hey, locked on SEC, hey, locked on Big Ten power, hey, locked on power two, like watch this video. There's a real chance, or a real pitch here for Iowa State. No, I'm not saying that. I'm just trying to kind of talk about this before we find ourselves in a crazy situation we haven't really explored. I think Iowa State would be just fine if everything went completely downhill so quickly. We're looking at two power conferences. Like, what would Iowa State do? I think they'd be fine. I think they'd find a way into one of the conferences. You're not looking at a middle to low tier football and basketball, like barely hanging in there in the Big 12. They're only successful because it's a Big 12. It's a parity driven league, blah, blah, blah. No, we're looking at a really, really, really good basketball program. Like, very good basketball program. Now, this year was short of expectations, but very good basketball program. And what Otts has done, and obviously is now has the contract extension. I mean, it's going to be sustained. On the football side of things, maybe over the last 133, 134 years, Iowa State has been perfect. Okay, Iowa State has lost a few games, but I think that the pendulum is kind of swinging on that upswing right now. We're starting to see the potential for down the line. Obviously, last season was so great. Matt Campbell, when you look at his seasons, back to back to back to back to back, beginning of his first time in Ames to now, where they're at, where they could be. I think there's a lot of upside there, and that's only those two. I mean, you talk about the cross country team and track is unbelievable, and the softball team, which completely got snubbed this season as far as the tournament goes, so much upside there. I mean, legitimately could be looking at a very, very good Iowa State softball program over the next 4 years with how young that team is. So and there's more, but all of that to say, I don't think Iowa State needs to be worried if it comes down to this Power 2 conference. Iowa State will find it at home. I think there's a lot of assets in Ames in the teams that wear cardinal and gold. Now, that being said, they're not perfect, and they do need to kind of figure out if they could get over the hump. I'm going to talk about what I think they need to do just that coming up right after this. All right, let's talk about Iowa State kind of in the future here. I think I accidentally clicked a button, so I hope you're with me here at Locked On Cyclones, our Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Iowa State, so close last season. So close in the Big 12 championship game against Arizona State. I was there. I bought the bus ticket. I went down. I witnessed history. Okay. I did. It wasn't what I was hoping it would be, but it was still history. And now Iowa State looks to build off of that and really make some noise. Now, we can split this up into football and basketball. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. We'll see where we're at. But nonetheless, football wise, if we just talk about what's coming up here in the fall, I think Iowa State needs to probably do all of the basic things that you would expect, right? Limit turnovers, score points, stop the other team from scoring, like defensive scoring, just normal football. Play good ball. Easy, right? Now, I could and probably will at some point this offseason really go in and talk about, well, what can the wide receivers do? And what can Rocco do? And what can we expect from the tight ends? And that's all great. But I want to just kind of say, like, in general, play good football. Like, just go out there, ball, stay loose, play good ball, and we'll go on from there. I think really Iowa State football needs to find some good leaders this season because they lost a lot of them last year. And Bo Freeler is the one that everybody talks about because he was a really good leader for that team. I think it's very abundantly clear at this point what he did. And he wasn't the only one. I mean, you're losing two just, it seems like maybe the best leaders in college football and Higgins and Noel in the wide receiver room, both from the same room. Right? And that doesn't even that's like some from the offense, some from the defense. That's not everybody. That's not everybody. Who's going to step up in the secondary for Iowa State this season? Is it Jontes? Sounds like it might be, but there's also a kind of a feeling from what we've heard of this element of, very not immature, but just little bit more bouncy. Is that the right word? Just popped in my head. It feels like it's like something like that, where it's like kind of just a little bit more off the cuff, a little bit less structured. And we've got a long time. We've got the whole summer here. It's June 4th. We've got a ways to go before we're playing real games. Okay, I understand that. But I think that the secondary definitely needs to get a good leader just because of the loss of Bo Frailer. And then I think that the defensive line probably needs a real dude in there as well. I just felt like the defensive line was a little bit of a weak point for Iowa State last year. You get a real leader in there who's in there every day, just pounding that rock, like saying football stuff, doing football things, getting that. It's like not that the culture's lacking, but really setting the tone for that defense, I think is going to be huge. And then on the offensive side of the ball, what's going to happen there? Running backs, not Chase, went straight to wide receivers. Abusama and Carson Hansen. What's going to happen there? Another year in the system. You got an opportunity to really just hit the ground running and move. Rocco, another year under his belt. I think that there's a great opportunity for leadership there. Chase Sowell and Xavier Townsend. What happens with those guys? How can they, kind of find their way into the system? Do previous guys on the team step up? Are guys coming in? The ones, Tomatoma McDonough, I think is I think pretty sure that's it, from Yale, will be with the team, and I think he's going to be a great addition. Someone we haven't really talked about, and a name that I am super, super, super excited about. That could be a huge difference on the defensive line. Where does he fit in as a leader? I think the leadership thing, it's going to come with time. It is. It's not something I expected. As soon as the season was over, they're like, "All right, Bo Freeler, you're done. Just go ahead and step up, sir. What's your name? Was that number 2? Okay, number 2 is our new defensive leader. Everyone, welcome in number 2. Yep. Okay, give us like it's not going to go like that, So I wasn't expecting necessarily that we would be looking right at immediately a just as well led team as last season. I'm not saying that, but I do think that if Iowa State can find some leadership there, that's going to get you through the tough times. That gets you through the adversity. That's what matters. Everyone's good when everything's good. right? When you're winning games, everyone's flying around. Everyone's excited to come to practice. Everyone's ready to go to film. Oh, did you see that play I made? Oh, nice play, nice tackle. Like and I know that that's a little bit movie-esque, but I'm kind of sitting in my studio here alone, not really in the film room per se. But you get it. Everyone's excited. Everyone's jazzed. Oh, I can't wait to go to rehab. Probably something no one's ever said unless they were on a 10-game win streak. Like, you know what I mean? But when you've lost 2 in a row, and your college football playoff hopes are on the line, and your Big 12 championship hopes are on the line, who's wanting to down that extra protein bar? Who's wanting to go out? And I guess at that point in the season, it might be a little colder. Who wants to go out in the cold and practice? Right? Who wants to go in the film room and get grilled about the mistakes they made, obviously in the game, but maybe in practice yesterday, and get better every single day? Nobody really wants to do that. There are a select few, but the vast majority don't. And that's where leaders step in, right? That's where you can get that whole thing turned around, come back out on the field on Saturday. Pow, boom. Iowa State's back in shape. They'll be just fine. That's where I kind of wonder what does the leadership situation look like? Yes, I do think I can say all the things that I've said before. I still think they're true. I think the tight ends are going to make a huge difference this year. I think the linebackers are going to make a huge difference. I do think there will be great production for the running back room. I am very excited to see what happens at the wide receiver position. Will Chase Sowell and Xavier Townsend step up as transfers? Will it be someone who's been on the team prior to this? Maybe Eli Green. And Rocco, obviously, on the offensive side of the ball. Can Dom Orange step up on the defensive side of the ball? Linebackers all healthy, or at least mostly healthy from what we've heard. You know, like all of that, I still agree with that. I still think Iowa State could be very, very good. Kyle Conrarty, obviously kicking. Maybe he needs a statue. Like, can we start having that conversation? Maybe that's one we need to have next week. When's the Kyle Conrarty statue going up? Are we going to maybe take down one of the whole Sci-Town buildings, put the statue there? As long as it doesn't look like Ronaldo's, the first one that they made, I think it'd be sweet. Like, dude, that was one of the I will never forget that game. Nonetheless, I just want to give the special teams some love, you know, because we talk so much about offense and defense, and special teams are part of the team too. All right, long snappers are people too. All right, let's not get it twisted here. The kickers, punters, if you know a kicker or punter in your life, long snapper, maybe a gunner, give them a round of applause, shake their hand, say, hey, thank you for everything you do that goes unseen. Because it does. Those are the guys that really make the wheels turn for these teams. They're out there, man, it's a long ways to run as a gunner. And you're doing it more than you want to. Put it that way. Getting pummeled in double coverage. You got to run down the whole field. Oh, it's just a mess. And yet those are the guys that make the whole team go. That's what Iowa State football is all about. Maybe we'll do this for basketball too. But I wanted to kind of talk on that a little bit, I guess. Maybe some leadership. Thank you guys for sticking around until this point in the episode. If you haven't hit subscribe, it's completely free. You're helping to prove it is, in fact, a Cyclone State. I appreciate you all for listening until this point in the episode. Until next time, Cyclone fans.